Hi, and welcome back to the lost episode, or the almost lost episode. You may wonder, if you're a regular viewer to the YouTube channel, why the Canary Room has been off air. If you follow us on Facebook, you'll know the hard drive that all of the episodes, Season 1, Season 2, and Season 3 of the show, the hard drive failed, and we've been trying to recover it for the last 6 weeks. Fortunately, I have been able to recover Season 1 and Season 2 of the show, which means that I have the animation and the music and all of the raw files from a few years ago, which is fantastic. I'm keeping everything crossed for Season 3, but who knows. So we had, in our last show, we'd hoped that we'd be going on the road. That hasn't materialised for this episode, although since this episode has been filmed, it was filmed mid to end of August, we have had one birdroom visit. We've been to see the birdroom of Gerald Spencer. All being well, and dependent on COVID restrictions, we've got 5 more visits planned throughout September, October, and early November, so that will carry us through until the season finale in December this year. It doesn't look like there will be any shows. A number of clubs had looked at still trying to hold an exhibition and a show this year. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. It's a moving picture here in the UK. So we've got a number of birdroom visits, fingers crossed, and of course we'll be back in the Canary Room. Cages are in construction as we speak, so at some stage we'll do a reveal of the new look room. Those of you, the observant amongst you, will notice over my left-hand shoulder there is a new addition. So the flight, which we've talked about, has been built. More about that on a future episode. So, as always, everyone, grab yourself a cuppa, sit back, and enjoy episode 16, the lost episode. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Canary Room, episode 16 of Season 3. As you can see, we're in the Canary Room. I had hoped for episode 16 that we'd be on the road. That hasn't materialised as yet. I've got a couple of visits that are that the dates keep moving on. So potentially September, the next episode of the show, will be on the road. Coming up on the show today, well, we've got some new arrivals in the Canary Room, some departures, unintended departures, as well. As always, the Redpole Diaries and all your favourite features. I must say a massive thank you to all of you who've donated, to Graham Parker, to Martin Gentles, to Donald Skinner-Reid, and thanks Donald for all your kind words about the show, and of course to Michael Burling. Thanks Michael, very much appreciated. And a huge congratulations to a viewer of the show, Rob Elkin, who as we can see here, has finally, after a significant amount of time trying, achieved the goal of breeding some Goldfinch mules. So he's managed to get 3 on the stick so far. So well done, Rob. Big thumbs up from me and the Canary Room here. So as always, grab yourself a cuppa, sit back and enjoy the show. Well, it's been as always, another couple of interesting weeks in the Canary Room since last you were here. You remember we decommissioned the flight cages. You might be able to see just in shot that we've recommissioned one of them. More on that later in the Redpole Diaries. The weather has played havoc with the birds. Unfortunately, it's taken its toll. We've lost a couple of the agate mosaics, a couple of cocks, and actually the agate mosaics, as we can see here, they're just not enjoying the molt. They're in a low cage, plenty of fresh seed, plenty of water, plenty of grit, plenty of baths. So I don't know what it is with them, but they're just not enjoying the molt. We lost one of the anchor birds in the Fife stud as well during the heat, so we lost one of the dark buff cock. We've got 4 birds, 4 adult birds singled off at the moment. He was one of 4, so he's been replaced by one of his sons. His son has bred some nice birds. He's bred some incredible birds, as we can see here. Heavily variegated yellow cock for me is arguably the standout bird of those. Beautiful shape on this Fife. He's heavily variegated yellow. I've bred some nice buff hens as well down from that line. So it's a shame really that the stud cock is no longer with us as part of keeping livestock, unfortunately. But what I have got is a number of birds, a number of his children and grandchildren, which means that the dark line is in good stead. Really, it's certainly not as much of a disaster had it been if I'd have lost him at the beginning of the year. But it's never nice to lose a bird. It's never nice to lose one of the anchor birds that you've built all of your future breeding plans around. So we've got 4 of the cocks. We had 10 cocks last year. We've picked 4 out as definite retain, and that's based really, primarily on their genetics, so the genetic quality, but also on the quality of the birds that they have produced this year. And that's one of the key criteria really. Where do you want the stud to go from a genetic perspective? So you've got to make sure that there's a freshness in your gene pool. You've got to make sure that you know what's behind those birds. So as much as possible, you can predict the outcomes. And you've got to make sure that you've got the right pairings moving forward. So looking at the birds that I've bred this year, each one of those cock birds I've got a number of sons from, which are of really, really top high quality, and as a consequence they've earned their place. I'm looking to keep, probably, I mentioned I think on the last episode, between 10 and 12 Fife cock birds, and between 18 and 20 Fife hens. Now I've singled off, or I've put in a flight cage rather, some of the over-year flight hens that I anticipate that I'd like to use again. I think there's going to be around 8 of those that make it 6 to 8. So I'll be looking for 12 to 14 really of the unflighted hens. So, big job on my hands in sort of mid-September, which is when I'll really start the selection. And some nice birds to pick from, which is great. It's a good problem. If you call it a problem, it's a good problem to have. So, good range across the colours this year, as well as we can see here. There is a couple of outstanding clear buffs, a cock and a hen here, and they've really this pair, or this 2 in particular, I say have come from nowhere. That would be an unfair statement to make. They have they've started and really developed. I liked them early on. I had an eye on them early on. but they've really developed over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks, and they've turned into, you know, some very, very nice birds, which is key. You know, a lot of people at this stage, you know, particularly there's a lot of birds in the Canary Room at the moment. You know, cleaning out is becoming almost a full-time job, and a lot of people, you know, will move birds early to get the room. I'm absolutely not going to do that. You know, first birds will probably leave the room at the end of September, and I'll have a really good idea of what they're going to finish out like. But, you know, birds like these two clears just go and show what, you know, how and what birds can develop and in the way they can develop. So, you know, it would be a folly really to get rid of things early. Also developing well are the borders. Now, I've had a lot of interest in the birds, so thanks everyone who's got in touch with me looking for new stock. I anticipate there will be some borders available to go, so without further ado, let's take a look at a couple of the borders in show cages. As you can see behind me, we've got a couple of the borders here, and just in the foreground there's a heavily variegated buff. I think this is going to be a hen, looking at some of the sweetness of it. And then in the rear we've got a variegated yellow cock. Buff is a second round bird, the cock is a first round bird. Still a way to go with them. Had the baths on them yesterday, you know, so they enjoyed a bathe yesterday, and you know, they need some show training, but there's a natural sort of steadiness in them, I think, as birds. Nice birds, you know, got a nice shape on them, which I think is important. Starting to show a nice little bit of leg, which is good. That's one of the things, you know, you want the borders to be up on the leg. As I mentioned before, there, you know, sort of the plans. I've made some acquisitions already. An opportunity arose, more of that in the Red Pole Diaries. So an opportunity arose, and what I've also done is made sure that my orders for next year, the acquisition of birds for next year, is pretty much sorted now. So although those birds aren't in the shed, I know where they're coming from, but a little bit more of that a bit later on in the show today. So I will have some borders to go. I've got to make some room. I anticipate running with a couple of pairs of borders next year. Good friend of mine, Graham Holdsworth, we can see here, variegated yellow hen that he's bred, which, you know, midway through the molt this bird, but you can see the kind of quality on it. And so Graham will... There'll be a couple of birds, I think, coming over from Graham's shed in here, so look to run 2 pairs of the borders next year. So, you know, you can contact me through all the usual channels if you're interested in bringing any borders in. As I say, there'll be 1 or 2, 2 or 3 to go this year, this time round, so to give us a message. So those are our borders. They're coming on nicely. Let's have a little look at some of the fifes and how they're developing. So, as we try and get the birds sort of through the molt successfully, you know, plenty of baths on. You can see a couple of the baths on here, and the birds have you know, enjoyed a morning bathe as we film the show early in the morning. The birds are at different stages, and you know, we've got some birds finishing off. First up here, you can see a lightly marked buff hen. This is bred out of the old pair, the heavily variegated buff hen and the heavily variegated yellow cock. Looks to be another outstanding bird, and very much in the mark to keep. Cage behind me here is you know, one of the buff hens, and I really like this bird. The feather quality on it's stunning. It was a bird that's you know, that I've had my eye on for some time, but it's come to the fore over the last few weeks. And you know, the fifes, they're all at different stages. We've had more shows cancelled since the last Canary Room episode. We may end up with some shows, maybe 3 or 4. Much remains to be seen, but I will prepare the birds for a show season. It'd be unfortunate if there weren't any shows, but obviously, people's health takes priority, so we'll moderate that. So Fife's in the Canary Room, doing quite nicely, touch wood. Let's go to that part of the show which fills us with love and enjoyment and frustration. It's the Redpole Diaries. So very much an eye to next year with the Redpole Diaries this week. I, as many of you will know, have been on the lookout for a linnet cock to try and do some muling next year, and I'd come across one on one of the groups and on Facebook, and made contact with the gentleman in the Midlands, and managed to pick up the linnet cock, but that's not all we picked up while we were there. So really with an eye to next year, as you know, got sort of big plans, although those plans are taking a while to get to fruition, which is frustrating, but I've just got to be patient. I know I know the kind of cages I want. I don't want to compromise on that, so I'm waiting and still waiting to try and get those that training movement and get those ordered so we can sort of complete the remodelling of the room. I have bought another deck of the Kookaburra cages. I did think I could get an extra one on top here. Nah, not a chance. So they're going to be 5 high. I'll raise them a little bit higher off the ground, I think, knowing that now. Bought another deck, as I say, and made some acquisitions. So I looked at getting a Bullfinch hen. This year's bred Bullfinch hen with an idea of maybe trying to do a linnet Bullfinch mule. Start with the easy ones, Matt. Why don't you? And was gifted a Bullfinch cock to go with it, which was very kind. So I've got a pair of native Bullfinches. They're still the 2020 birds, appropriately rung. So. They've still got some growing to do on them. They obviously won't be as big as Siberians, but they've got a little bit more to come on. As luck would have it, one of the favourite foods of a bullfinch is rowan berries, or mountain ash. And my mum and I happen to have mountain ash trees right outside of our houses, so I'm keeping an eye on the berries. Obviously I'll let the wild birds take their share. They're not ready yet, but I'll be able to harvest those late September probably, and give those to the bullies, so hopefully they'll enjoy them. I was also able to acquire a pair of chaffinches, which I was delighted about. I've admired the chaffs for many, many years. Now they are in a flight cage at the moment. All the birds that I've picked up have been aviary bred. So there is, there's some steadying to do. But having got them in early, potentially a little bit too early, I will hopefully be able to acclimatise them to their new surroundings. So, pair of chaffs. What we'll do with the chaffs is we will complete the project in between the garage and the Canary Room, and we'll build a flight for them. That'll be just over 10 foot long, 2.5 foot wide, and about 6 foot high. Very territorial. So they'll be the only pair that go in there. So that'll be good. That'll give us something to look forward to for next year. Managed to acquire some Goldfinches as well, an over-year pair, an adult pair, and a couple of sort of pairs of greys. Now again, there's There's a risk. These birds aren't molted yet. In fact, they're just starting the molt now. So a couple of risks involved. One, you can't sex them at this age, although I think a wild stab that we might have another 2 pairs. And 2, obviously moving them. Something I don't recommend at all. I had an opportunity, and that opportunity was a time-bound opportunity, so I've taken it. I'm aware of the risks. I put the birds on pantercocks this week, so they've had a couple of days of that now. One of the beauties with these cages is obviously you can keep an eye on the droppings. Fortunately, the droppings look as I expect them to. There isn't any evidence of green dropping, which is good. The birds are susceptible, to stress and illness then. So we'll keep our fingers crossed with them. By no means out the woods, but they are an addition. So we'll have, all things being well, next year in the Redpole Diaries, we've got our redpoles. I've got a couple more redpoles coming in. From a breeder that I've earmarked, so looking forward to welcoming them. I've sent off for my DNA sexing kit, so I'm just waiting for those to arrive. So we'll do DNA sexing on another episode. And so far the Siberians, a couple of them, they're not really enjoying the molt. They've not really enjoyed the weather over the last couple of days. It's been incredibly hot here in the UK. I've been spraying the birds, I've been giving them baths, I've been doing everything I can, changing the water twice daily, everything I can really to make it as easy as possible. So the molt is always a time where it's a leveler, so inevitably there'll be more heartache in the Redpole Diaries, but it wouldn't be the Redpole Diaries without it, would it? So the foundation's really set for next year. That's this week's Redpole Diaries. So there are our acquisition of British finches, and we'll be keeping absolutely everything crossed over the courses of the coming weeks and months that they make it through successfully. We've already talked on the show about the selection of fives and alluded to some of the other birds that we'll be looking to bring into the Canary Room. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll look to bring in another pair of boarders from my good friend Graham. He's bred some really nice birds this year. He really has. He's really gone up a level in the quality of the birds that he's bred. We have secured a couple of pairs of Norwich, so they're still molting out. Obviously they won't come in probably till October, November time now, and also a trio of Irish fancy, so a new species to the Canary Room for next year. So one of the ideas is that we'll run one of the Goldies, probably with an Irish fancy hen, to look at breeding some mini mules. What I'm more than likely do is take my normal pea-throat Goldie cock and put that with one of the new hens that has come in, and then if there's a cock in there, use that to do the muling. He's an outstanding bird, all being well. He's on an orange ring, so he's not getting any younger, but all being well, he'll make it through. So as I say, a trio of Irish fancy. It'll be the first time I've had Irish fancy in the shed, so very much looking forward to them being here. And got a trio because I understand that they make excellent feeders, as well as wanting to breed some and mini mule with them. So that's really to come for us. So we've got a new couple of pairs of Norwich coming in, we've got some more boarders coming in, and we've got the Irish fancy coming in. Of course, we've got the grey wings coming in from Julian, and that will be it. So next couple of months really is focused on getting these birds through the molt, and then making sure that we've got the right selection process for next year as the cycle of conditioning for the breeding season starts all over again. Question time this week. A really good question from Andy Williams on one of the shows. I don't think it's the Andy Williams. I think it's a different Andy Williams. Matt, you've got so many birds on in the Canary Room. How do you decide what varieties to keep? Andy, it's an incredibly good question. The fifes, although I know some of you may think differently, the fifes are very much my first love. They're the birds that I exhibit across the UK. They're the birds I'm a panel judge for. They're the birds that I am just about finished writing a book on, although I do cover the other varieties of canaries in there as well. So fifes really, Andy, are my first love. Very much the sort of the go-to bird for me. Very much the bird that I strive to breed. Real quality exhibition standard on. Although that said, I do that with all of the birds that I breed. The British and my love for the British stretches back to childhood, really. My grandmother, Dutch grandmother Omar, bought me a book on British birds for my 4th or 5th Christmas in the late 70s, and since then I've always had a real fascination for native finches, and then obviously latterly I've got the Siberians in. So my love for the British finches is well established, deep rooted, you could say. They certainly won't ever replace fully the canaries in the room, although they do seem to be taking up more and more room as the years pass. And then the other birds is really about an appreciation. So the Norwich, I appreciate the beauty of the Norwich. They are stunning canaries. The Borders, again, you'd argue a larger version of the fife, although the modern day fife, looks certainly very little like a border now. So the Borders, I think, a really nice border is just a really elegant bird. And then the Norwich, again, there's a real presence in that bird, a good strong head on it. So something nice to look at. The colours, obviously, the attraction with the coloured canaries is that you can, certainly with the mosaic variety, you can sex them at birth, which, as I use them, supposed to breed themselves, but also as additional feeders, then that's a useful addition in here. The Scotch Fancy, which I've owned, you start to see the appeal of those birds. They have a natural appeal. The Irish, which I'll look to get as well, again, quite an elegant canary. The red factors or the red intensives that I've had before now, again, something visually beautiful. So, people often say to me, what should I get? What birds would I get? Well, get the birds and keep the colours that you enjoy. The hobby is probably 90% cleaning out cages. And 10% actually having the chance to sit back and look and enjoy them. So get a bird, get a species you enjoy, keep colours you enjoy. The fifes this year have really lightened up. So I've got more clears than I've probably ever bred. Maybe going back to the first year I kept fifes. But I still like a really nice dark green bird, and I really like the allied to whites, and bred a few allied to whites this year, and we'll keep the vast majority of them on for next year. So Andy, many thanks for the question. I hope that answers it really. Get the birds that you love, get the birds you enjoy, and for me, of course, there's a challenge in aviculture. Part of that challenge to sort of, with the fifes, to breed to the exhibition standard, with the bullfinches, with the chaffinches, to keep and breed and successfully rear, similar with the goldfinches, similar with the redpolls. And with the other canaries, the Norwich and the Borders, again to breed. I have shown Norwich in the past. I haven't shown Borders, but certainly would intend to. And yeah. So Andy, many thanks for the question. Listen, that's all we've got time for today. If you've enjoyed the show, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button for notifications, so when a new episode comes along, you'll get an automatic notification. If you are able to make a donation to the show, it covers my production costs. It's very much appreciated. Thank you. Until next time, when hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be on the road. Thanks for watching and take care.